Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary and today's video is going to be my June wrap-up.
I should have told you that I loved you one more time.
So as per always, I'm going to start this video with my reading stats for the month of June. I did just want to mention that I did participate in the Whatever-a-thon or Whatever You Want-a-thon, which is a readathon hosted by Maddie at Book Browsing Blog. I will have her channel linked down below. I was on Camp Contemporary, so if we won, then yay. I think you will know when this video goes up who won, but regardless, I don't know right now, but I'm just going to go into this with the energy that Camp Contemporary won because I'm proud of us. I read a total of 13 books this month, which is pretty good for me. It's slightly above average. I read a total of 4,986 pages this month, which is, I think, less than I normally read, or about where I normally read. Some books I read were really short, and most of the books that I read were contemporaries, so they were a little bit shorter. I read one book published in the 19th century, one book published in 2005, two books published in 2006, one book published in 2015, one book published in 2016, two books published in 2017, three books published in 2019, one book published in 2020, and one book published in 2021. I read from 4 male and 8 female authors this month. I did read one book by the same author, or 2 books by the same author, I guess, which I will get to here in a second. I read from 3 authors of color. I read from authors from 5 different countries. I read 2 YA, 1 middle grade, and 10 adult books this month. As far as the genre breakdown, I did read 2 science fiction, 1 classic, 3 fantasy, 5 romance or contemporaries, 1 mystery thriller, and 1 historical fiction. I also read 1 short story and 1 graphic novel, and the rest were just standard novels. I read 2 books off of my own TBR, and my goal is to read 1 book off of my own TBR every month. I read 3 physical books. I listened to 4 audiobooks. I read 5 ebooks, and I did read 1 book using a combination of the physical book and the audiobook. I gave 1 book 2-star, 4 3 stars, 4 4 stars, and 4 5 stars, which averages out to a 3.84 star rating, which is pretty good. I think it's lower than last month's, but I'm still pretty pleased with that. I read a lot of 5 stars this month, which I'm pretty excited about. Those are my stats, and without further ado, I'm just going to get into the first book that I finished this month, and the first book that I finished was The Wanderers by Chuck Wendig. I gave this book 2 stars. I read most of it in May. I just finished it up in June, and I really didn't like it. I kind of wish I DNF'd it, but I didn't DNF it because I'd already read like 550 pages by the time I thought about DNFing it, and then I ended up listening to this as an audiobook. It follows 2 sisters primarily. Nessie, I think is her sister's name, and Nessie is the first person afflicted with this sleepwalking disorder thing where they don't know why or what causes it, but these people just start kind of sleepwalking towards an unknown destination. They also get like weird powers, like they're able to just like climb over vehicles and stuff, and they're just walking in a straight line towards something. And then people like Shayna and family members and loved ones of the people who are afflicted with this disease or whatever it is follow them and guard the flock. This book has one of my favorite tropes, which is like the long walk. It's in The Stand by Stephen King. It's also in The Book of M by Pink Shepherd. And I love that. Usually it's something that's so intriguing to me where there's like post-apocalyptic world, and for whatever reason, this group of people that's left have to walk to a certain destination. I just didn't feel like this book was very successful in anything that it really tried to do. And I thought the ending and like the explanation for things was really interesting, but I wish that it had been revealed sooner, if that makes sense, so that the author could have played with the concepts that he sort of created more than he did, rather than I felt like a lot of the plot ended up being about this white supremacist group that was trying to turn the country against the flock. And I just felt like that didn't go with this book very well, and I didn't feel like he offered anything new to the story by doing that, and I just didn't like it personally. So yeah, I did give that book 2 stars. I was very disappointed by it. The second book that I finished in the month of June was If I Never Met You by MacFarlane, I think is how her name is pronounced. But this is a romance. It's like an office romance with like a fake dating trope, and it's about this woman Lori, who is in her mid-30s, and she's been with the same guy for 18 years, and one day he sort of freaks out on her and is like, I don't want to get married, I don't want to have a baby, I don't want to do any of this stuff, I don't even want to be with you anymore, and he leaves her, and she thinks it's just a phase, and then a couple months later, he gets his new girlfriend pregnant.
This is so sad. Alexa, play Despacito.
Which sucks.
Like, why? So I'm kind of gonna just rant and, like, be emotional.
So then, to sort of get back at her ex, she decides she's gonna start dating the office playboy, and he is in on it as well. They're in a fake dating relationship because he was told by the partners at the law firm that they work at that in order for him to be up for promotion, he has to show that he's got a serious life, which is not something that would ever happen, by the way. I don't know if anyone, like, thinks that that would happen. That's not something that happens. In fact, usually men are given more promotions when they're unattached, but whatever.
Girl, what the fuck is you talking about?
That's just my little, like, spiel about that. But they do this fake dating thing and then they actually fall in love or whatever. So you get to watch their relationship blossom. And I liked this for a couple of different reasons. I liked it because we got to follow Lori through her breakup. So we weren't just told about this past relationship that she'd been in at the beginning of the book and, like, caught up to speed. We actually got to watch her get broken up with and deal with the grief that comes from losing someone that you've been with for half your life. And then we also got to see, obviously, her relationship unfold with this new person, Jamie. And then we got to sort of see how she misunderstood Jamie and how he misunderstood her. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars. It did make me, like, tear up, and I felt very emotionally attached to the characters.
This is so sad. Alexa, play Despacito.
And I just was really rooting for them, which is kind of what I want in a romance. I will say this is a very chaste romance, and there's no smut. So if you don't like smut, this is a perfect book that I think you should pick up. I think you would really enjoy it. Also, there's no hate to love, or, like, none of the characters are mean to each other. There's a little bit of banter at the beginning where Lori is kind of mean to Jamie, but he's not mean to her, so if you don't like hate to love for that reason, or like bully romances, again, I think this one's perfect. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. Then I listened to The Sea of Monsters as an audiobook. I am working my way through the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series by Riordan. Most of these books I've read before, but I never finished the series. I can't remember if I read the 4th book. I definitely did not read the 5th book, so I'm hoping to finish the series off this year. But this is the 2nd book, The Sea of Monsters. It was actually the 1st book that I read because I didn't realize it was a series when I read it in, like, 5th or 6th grade. But I do really enjoy this book. It follows Percy Jackson, who finds out he is half Greek god, and he goes to this place called Camp Half-Blood, which is the safest place for demigods to be, and he gets to be with all these other demigods. And then he goes on quests to try to prove himself and to try to, like, save remnants of his world. It's just a really sweet series. I'm really enjoying my reread of it. I'm glad I decided to finally try to finish it. And I gave that one 5 stars as well. The 4th book that I finished is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is a fantasy. It's the first book in a series, but none of the other books in that series have come out yet. There is a, what's it called? A short story that goes with this, so I did read that as well. That is called The Hope of Elantris. I gave Elantris 4 stars. I gave The Hope of Elantris 3 stars. It follows some events that happen at the end of the book, Elantris, but from a different perspective. And I just didn't feel like it really added anything. I didn't really care about it that much.
Clap if you care. All right, let's move on.
So Elantris is told from 3 perspectives. Like I mentioned, it is a high fantasy story, and it's part of the Cosmere by Brandon Sanderson. It's the only book that Cosmere I've read, so I'm not quite sure how it relates to the other series in that universe. But it does follow 3 perspectives. The first perspective is the Crown Prince of Erelon, and he is undertaken by this thing called the Shroud, I think is what it is, which is basically kind of a disease that you get, and used to, the Shroud would make you, you would turn into an Elantrian, and they were like godlike beings in this city called Elantris, but something happened, and Elantris has fallen, and now everyone in Elantris is overtaken by this thing called the Shroud, which basically means you're dead but still alive. So if you get hurt, your body no longer heals itself the way that, like, a living body would, but you're not dead. And then the other perspective that we follow, or one of the other perspectives that we follow, is Shaylin, I think is her name. I don't remember if that's how it's pronounced or spelled or anything, but she is a princess of Teod, and she was betrothed to marry the Crown Prince of Erelon, and when he gets taken over by the Shroud and thrown into Elantris, his dad and the court covers up for that by saying that he has died, and in their marriage contract, it says that she can't marry anyone else if he dies before they get married, because they'll just be considered married, which doesn't really make sense to me, but that's, you just sort of accept it and that's that. And then the third perspective that we follow is this guy Riordan, who is a priest, a high priest of this religion that's sort of trying to take over all of these countries in this world. There's a lot of religious intrigue, a lot of political intrigue in this story. I'm not gonna lie to you, there's like fight scenes and like a war scene towards the end, and I skimmed huge pages of that. I don't think military fantasy is for me, and this isn't even super militaristic. I just didn't care about that part, I guess. But yeah, I did give it 4 stars for that reason. I thought the world building was really good. I've heard people complain about the characters, but I quite liked them. Yes, I did really enjoy this book, and I'm glad I read it. The next book that I finished was Bonfire by Kristen Ritter, and I didn't mention this earlier, but I did do a reading vlog where I read books about lawyers. I will link that somewhere if you haven't seen it and you would like to. But Bonfire is by the actress Kristen Ritter, which is one of the reasons I wanted to read it. I thought that it would be interesting to see if she was a good writer. She was fine. I gave this book 3 stars. It was fine. It's a legal thriller following this woman who is an attorney in Chicago, and she's from this really small town in Indiana, and she's an environmental attorney. And in this small town in Indiana, they hear a rumor that some company is dumping into the water supply and making people sick. So in her capacity as an attorney, she goes back to her hometown to investigate this, but also she has a lot of trauma from growing up and a lot of flashbacks to being in high school and things that happened while she was in high school, and it winds up being much more about this mean girl who went to her high school and then disappeared at the end of their, I think, senior year than it is about anything else, and her suspicion that the town is covering something up in regards to that. So I did think this book was interesting. It wasn't quite what I was looking for, but I didn't hate it, and I think if that sounds interesting to you, you might enjoy it. The writing is nothing to write home about, but it's not bad. I will say I didn't watch a ton of Jessica Jones, but the way Kristen Ritter wrote this story, it reminds me of Jessica Jones in a weird way. So if you've read this, let me know if that is accurate to you. But I think if you liked Jessica Jones and like that style of female character, it's the same style of female character, if that makes sense. The next book that I finished was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, which is a historical fiction set in World War II, and we follow 2 sisters. They're in France during Hitler's, what is the word? Takeover of Paris. There's something else. There's another word for that, but I don't know what it is right now, so we're just gonna go with it. I didn't like this book very much. I gave it 3 stars. It was a really low 3-star, actually. It was almost a 2-star. Yeah, I didn't like either of the characters. I thought both of the sisters were like annoying in different ways and just not sympathetic to me. I was not sympathetic to them at all. Which is not how you want to feel when you're reading a story about war. I did cry in this book. That's just because of the things that could be in a book. World War II will always make me cry. This book also has the good Nazi trope, which I hate. So if you also hate that, you might hate this. The main thing that bothered me about this book, though, was the way in which the writer would say things and then say something completely contradictory to what she just said. Like, really close together. So it felt like someone, she had an editor for this book, though, is what I can't figure out. Someone edited this book and was like, yeah, all these contradictions can stay in. No one will notice. Which I just don't get. The other thing that really bothered me about this is that this book focuses so much. One of the sisters had the potential to be, like, a badass character, but the whole thing is, like, she's able to do all these things because she's pretty. And people don't take her seriously because she's pretty, which is definitely a thing. But I just wish they'd given her more substance rather than it feeling like she was just pretty. And that's why. Because instead of it being like people didn't take her seriously because she was pretty, so she was able to do all these smart, clever things, it was like she didn't do anything. And then they were like, she's pretty, so no one suspects her of anything. But it's like she's not doing anything. I don't know. I have a feeling people really love that book, so they might, if you have thoughts that you would like to explain to me why I'm wrong, I would love to hear it. The next book that I finished was The Things You Save in a Fire, and this I loved. I ended up giving this 4 stars. It was almost a 5-star, but just not quite. This is it's a contemporary with a romance element, and like, it's very chick-litty more so than romance, I would say, because it's about this woman who is a firefighter in Austen. She's the first female firefighter to achieve all these accolades. And she gets a call from her mom, who she hasn't really had a close relationship to since she was a teenager because her mom divorced her dad and left her to be with another man when she was like, I think the main character was like 16 when this happened, and she never really forgave her mom for that. And then she went through some traumatic event immediately after that, but her mom calls her and says, hey, I know we haven't really been close. I had to get this eye surgery, and I'm gonna need someone to drive me to the doctor and to help me do all these things. Can you come to Massachusetts and live with me for a year? Why not? I'm gonna go to Massachusetts, and she's in a small town in New England, and she's one of the new firefighters, and there's another new firefighter starting with her, and lo and behold, she has feelings for this guy, but she really can't. And also she's like trying to revamp her relationship with her mom, or she's not trying to, but her mom is trying to revamp her relationship with her. So there's all this stuff going on. I loved it. I thought it was really sweet. I've heard that not everyone likes it. It doesn't have the best reviews, but I did really enjoy it. I read it in one day. Highly recommend. Sorry, I'm stretching my legs out. I'm sweaty, but I don't want to turn my AC on because it's loud. The next book that I finished is Call Me By Your Name by Aciman. Aciman? I don't know how that's pronounced. This is a gay love story. I'm pretty sure everyone's heard of this, but it's about these young boys. Well, I guess one of them is a young boy, the other one's kind of a young man. But it's a 17-year-old named Elio who lives in Italy, and I want to say his parents are like either diplomats or professors or something. And then every summer they have a summer stay, which is just someone who is an academic, comes and stays with them for free, works on their writing, and usually helps his dad with stuff. And this summer it's Oliver. And it's Elio and Oliver's love story, but it's also about like the feeling of being vulnerable with someone for the first time, because obviously this is the 80s and I think they're both bisexual is my understanding of this. I could be reading that wrong, but just the way that the author talks about Elio experiencing relationships with women, and also the way that Oliver is sort of observed with women, and that could be entirely wrong, but Elio never says anything that makes me believe, and this is from his point of view, he never says anything that makes me believe that he doesn't like women. So at least Elio, I'm pretty sure, is bisexual, which we love to see the bi rep. I love to see it. So I'm really glad that I read this. I absolutely love this. Yeah, I want to watch this movie now because this story made me sob. It's just about these two men discovering their love for each other and the true intimacy. The Goodreads says something about, on the back it says, recklessly the two verge toward the one thing both fear they may never truly find again. Total intimacy. And that is sort of what it's about. It's about being completely comfortable with someone in a way that you never are again. I love this book. I would highly, if you have not read this book yet, you have to read it. It's so good. And then, speaking of so good, the next book that I read was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. And y'all, this is another 5-star read for me.
Talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular.
So this, as the title sort of implies, is a hate-to-love romance, and it's an office romance between these two people who, it's Lucy and Josh, and they share an office space because they are both the executive assistants to people who used to be CEOs of their own companies, but the companies have had a merger, and so now Lucy and Josh sit at two desks across from each other all day, and they hate each other, or so they think, and then they fall in love. I don't know. I loved this book. This one does have a little bit of steam. That's the other thing I wanted to mention about Things You Take in a Fire. Again, totally smut-free, steam-free. There's like some making out, but that's about it. This one, there's smut. So if you don't like that, probably not great for you, but it's not overwhelming. It's not like a ton. So I still really enjoyed it. But as we know, that I'm on a journey to being able to read sex scenes and not be uncomfortable. And I was not uncomfortable when I read this book, so I will say that. I absolutely loved it. I love Lucy and Josh's banter. I love that they sort of experience real trials and tribulations, and they're competing for a job. That's the other thing. They're both competing to see who gets to be COO. I don't remember. Chief Operating Officer, probably is what that stands for. I just loved it. I thought it was great. I loved Josh as a love interest. I thought he was so sweet, and he's very much got that like, I'm a grump who hates everyone except for you thing going on. So if you like that, I think you would really enjoy this. I absolutely love this book. I read it twice. Don't tell anyone. I didn't count that on my page counts, but I did like bookmark my favorite parts and go back and reread them before I had to return it to my library. So Anyways, after that I read The Hope of Elantris, but I've already sort of covered that, so I'm not going to go into it anymore. I read Mansfield Park by Jane Austen as part of my Jane Austen book club. I'll link all the info if you haven't heard of it yet, and I will link the live show where we talked about Mansfield Park. I won't really go into it here, but it's about Fanny Price, who when she's 10 years old is adopted by a wealthy relative and taken to live at Mansfield Park. It's just about her life there and sort of what happens with her family. It's an interesting book. I gave it 3 stars. I liked it a lot more after talking about it with the book club, but again, I will link that live show. So if you have read that and you would like to know what I'm talking about, you can watch it. It's an hour long, so I would watch it on 2 times speed if I were you. Then I read The Ones We're Meant to Find, and I'm not going to talk about this here because I'm doing a wrap-up at the end of the year of all my 5-star predictions, and this was one of them. So it is a sci-fi book. It's YA sci-fi about 2 sisters. One sister is stuck on one sister wakes up on an island, and all she knows is she has to get back to her sister. She can't really remember very much about herself. And the other sister is in this eco-city in the New Earth, and basically the eco-cities are built into the sky because people have polluted the Earth so bad that it's no longer safe to live on it. And the way you get admitted into the eco-city is by you and your family history with being environmentally sustainable. Again, I'm not going to tell you my final ranking until probably December. So whenever I finish all my other ones, I will post the video about reading my 5-star predictions and how I felt, but I'm trying to do like a vlog style thing. It's not going well, but we'll see. And then the last book that I finished literally last night was Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which is a graphic novel. It's a contemporary romance graphic novel. It's sapphic. It's about this girl, Freddie, who's writing to an advice columnist, and she's basically telling the story of her girlfriend, Laura Dean, who keeps flirting with other girls, kissing other girls, flirting with other boys, and just like really making Freddie feel bad about herself. And it's just her discovering what her self-worth is and what she values in her life and in people in her life. Yeah, it was really sweet. I loved the art style. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I did tear up, which I wasn't expecting. I don't know if y'all remember, I remember being in high school and having a crush on someone, and anytime they wanted to talk to me, I was there. So I think that was just really relatable for me. But yes, I really did love this story. I thought it was very sweet. And that's it. Those are the 13 books that I read in June. This video took forever to film. I've been filming for more than 30 minutes, so hopefully I can edit it down to something that's like half that long, but we'll see. If you enjoyed this video and you made it to the end, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below telling me what your favorite book you read in June was. Also, feel free to let me know if you've read any of these books and how you felt about them, and I will see you in my next video.